there, welcome back to our YouTube channel. Welcome back to another video. We're happy to have you here. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica, and we're the Certified Occupational Therapy Assistants with Harkla. Today we're going to give you 5 tips for a sensory-friendly mealtime routine.
So before we jump in and give you all the tips and tricks here today, we want to remind you that sitting down at the table for a meal is a full sensory experience. You have 8 senses, and just about each one of those is being targeted when we're sitting down for a meal. So the first one, vestibular, proprioceptive, you're sitting down, you're maintaining an upright position while you are sitting at the table, which requires, your vestibular and proprioceptive systems to connect.
The next one is interoception, and this is your ability to identify when you're hungry, when you're thirsty, as well as when you're full and when you don't need to eat anymore.
Yep. For your visual sense, you have to look at all the food, you have to process all the food, you have to look at all the people at the table and maybe make eye contact and pay attention to what's safe to eat and what isn't safe to eat and where to put your cup and how to pick up your utensil and where to see it. I mean, wow, that was a lot right there.
There's a lot of visual input. The next is olfactory and gustatory, and this is your sense of smell and your sense of taste, which is pretty self-explanatory on how those are used during a meal.
The auditory system is next, and whoa, this is a tough one. You have to listen to people talk, you have to listen to people chew, you have to hear other conversations, you have to tune out unnecessary background information. So there is a lot that goes into your auditory processing at the meal table.
Yeah, the last one is tactile, and eating is a tactile experience because you have tactile receptors in and around your mouth. So anytime you're eating, you're chewing, you're drinking something, your tactile system is constantly working.
So as you can see, this can be very overstimulating for a child with sensory differences. They just might sit down at the table or refuse to come to the table because they know how challenging it's going to be to just maintain an organized sensory system throughout the entire meal.
So let's jump into our 5 tips for making the mealtime routine sensory friendly.
So the first tip is to change the external sensory experience. So make it different. Things like turning on some mood lighting or some classical music, or maybe put some essential oils on in the background with a diffuser. So providing some calming sensory input from an external world, it might calm them down internally to allow them to eat.
Yeah, if the meal table room is less overstimulating, it's going to be a little bit easier for them to sit and attend to eating. You can also try taking some of the things off of the meal table, so having fewer items to visually see on the table. Maybe instead of putting all of the food dishes on the table while you're eating, have them away in the kitchen. So there's just less visual stimuli at the table.
The next one is to do a sensory diet before dinner. This is a really overlooked strategy that honestly every child can benefit from. Do some frog hops on the way to the table, or do a bear crawl or a turtle crawl, or do an obstacle course before dinner. That way you're prepping their big body muscles, their big body, just like their whole body, gross motor, in order to help them be successful with those fine motor and those oral motor skills.
If you want to learn more about sensory diets and how they work and how to set them up, we do have some free resources, YouTube video, podcast episodes on this topic, so we'll link them in the description. So if you're interested in setting up a mealtime sensory diet, you can learn more.
Yep. The next one is to allow modifications at the meal table. So things like noise-canceling headphones or a hat or sunglasses, or maybe let them sit on a therapy ball or stand at the meal table as well. Things like that can give them a little bit more control. They can feel a little bit more comfortable in their own body, and hopefully that will help them be more successful.
Also provide opportunities for different types of dishes and different types of silverware and different types of cups, so that it's not always the same, but maybe changing it up and making the dishes that they use every meal can make it more fun and engaging, and maybe finding some silverware that is a little bit easier for them to manage if they struggle with fine motor skills can be super helpful.
The next one is to provide clear and consistent expectations. This means that if you say no cookies before dinner, then you mean it. And it can be really confusing, especially to a young toddler who asks for a cookie before, or I say asks, but whines for a cookie before dinner. It can be really hard to stand firm and to say, no, we have cookies after dinner.
Especially if they start melting down.
Exactly. It
can be hard.
So a big thing that I've personally found to be helpful is to give my toddler a task to do while I'm cooking dinner, while my husband cooks dinner. I'm not a very good cook. But to give them a task like cutting a cucumber or, setting the table or getting water for everyone. That way they feel included, they're busy, they're in control, and it helps them feel just a little bit more, prepared for the meal that we're going to have.
Yeah. I think going along with that is going to be to make sure that you have consistent meal times instead of, snacking all over, which sometimes is challenging for our kiddos. We want them to make sure they're getting enough food, so we allow them to snack a lot, but trying to set it up so that they have consistent meal times at the same time every day. Use a visual schedule with this so they can visually see when it's time to eat a snack, when it's time to eat lunch. They know what they're doing before and after, and that helps them set them up for success for these meals.
The last tip here we're going to share with you is another tried and true tip, which is creating a no thank you bowl. So for a child who is refusing food or spitting food out, or they just are throwing their food on the floor, hello to our little babies that we're raising right now, then you can create a no thank you bowl, and it's just a bowl that you put on the table, and any food that they don't want, they have the opportunity to touch it and interact with it and put it in the no thank you bowl. Maybe if they are looking at it a little differently, they will pick it back up and explore it. But the goal here is to provide more of an expected behavior at the mealtime table, so that way they're not throwing their food, spitting it out, which, it all happens. It's going to happen, of course, but we give them a target, and hopefully they're going to start to learn to put that food that they don't want in that bowl. But the great thing about it is they still are interacting with the food. They still have to touch it, which is a big part of it. You can have them lick it, kiss it, touch it, bite it. That's kind of the rule in our house, in order to just get more comfortable with it, because they won't get comfortable with it if they don't ever experience it and interact with it.
That's true. Now, if you need more tips and tricks for mealtime, if you have picky eaters and you want some ideas, we have YouTube videos and podcast episodes on this topic, and we will link them in the description so that you can dive into those for more strategies, more help. The podcast is All Things Sensory Podcast, and it's on all podcast platforms.
Make sure you come hang out with us on Instagram. You can find us at Harkla_family, as well as at All Things Sensory Podcast. We love to hang out and share tips. Make sure you watch our stories there. We have a lot of fun.
If you liked this video, if you found it helpful, let us know. Leave us a comment with your favorite strategy that you learned, when you tried it, how did it go? Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And if you have any concerns with your child's feeding or just their development overall, we highly recommend seeking out an occupational therapist and getting an evaluation, chatting with your pediatrician, because nothing replaces in-person therapy like in-person therapy.
Yeah, that's true. All right, that's all we have for you today, so we will see you next time.
It's like how Casey always says sensory inputs. I'm like, it's input, Casey! Take the S off! We're crying out loud!
Okay,
you got this.
I don't know why this one's just the hardest so far. Okay.